The first matrix I built was a work of art. A novel by Seth Khaled, Christopher Robert Neal, Esquire, and OpenAI ChatGPT GPT-5. Chapter 3, Sleep Songs. The overnight wing went quiet the way deserts go quiet by revealing how much noise you were carrying. The day staff thinned to silhouettes on wheels. The vending machines clicked into their lonely metronomes. In the pulse room, the Hallow sat on the cart like a moon torn from its orbit and told to behave. Baseline first, Dr. Ibarra said. 10 minutes, eyes closed. Normal breath. Then we start the lullaby. Lullaby, Seth repeated, trying not to like the word. He had eaten the molokhia his mother texted him a photograph of, or a cafeteria approximation of it. Greens too timid, rice too loud. He felt steady in the way a boat tied at 2 posts feels steady. The nurse adjusted the Hallow. Warm enough? She asked, palms gentle at his temples. Warm is fine, he said. Warm makes it feel like a person is doing this. Don't make me cry before midnight, she said, but her voice softened. The band recognized him with a feline tick. The room lights dimmed on a timer that had learned the poetry of dusk. On the wall, raw EEG lines laced across a dark field, an inscription of weather the old gods would have read with a finger. The safety guardian blinked a patient green. Tonight is closed-loop spindle work, Ibarra said, businesslike to keep her own superstition quiet. We listen? We nudge? We withdraw? If you wake, we reset. If you dream of linen and swear at me in the morning, we count it as success. What do we teach it? Seth asked. Nothing the brain doesn't already sing, she said. We only harmonize. He lay back. The bed made a paper sigh. He thought of the corridor Lennox had named without naming, and let the thought pass like a polite acquaintance. He watched the room retreat along a track of its own logic, the cart, the glass, the tiles, until it became an arrangement of shapes without their jobs. Then he closed his eyes. Alpha waves unfurled in pleasant, sloppy fans. The Hallow listened without touching. The octo-module mapped his occipital drift with the patience of a lighthouse. The ultrasound ring sketched gentle pressure at the skull base, a cue to the vestibular system. It is night and safe. Lean into it. Sleep took him the way good water takes a swimmer first, around the limbs, then under them. The lines on the wall thinned and thickened, sank into the steady plateau of stage 2. Ibarra leaned toward the tracers and smiled the way mathematicians smile when the curve finally behaves. There, she said, too softly for anyone but herself. A K-complex rose like a slow mountain, all slope and sudden. The Hallow sang back not in sound, but in a burst of light, too quick for eyes, piped through bone and filtered by timing. A flick on the rising edge of the K-complex, a tapped glass. The cortex answered with a spindle, a 12-15 hertz's shiver that flowered and decayed, like a hand spreading and closing. Another spindle followed, phase-locked. The thalamus, subtle as always, did its old, generous work. Ferrying patterns, cementing them, stamping them with keep. On the cart, the closed-loop controller preened. Each spindle was a call and answer. Each answer seeded another. The algorithm nudged only when the slope whispered yes. It withdrew when the yes turned to maybe. It was polite. Machines can learn politeness when you shame them enough. In Seth's head, a river rearranged its stones. In the dream, he was on a bus that never braked, hands wrapped around a rail whose bite he could grade in units of childhood. The rail made a linen sound, which made no sense until he realized the sound was a texture, not a tone, and then realized that textures make their own music when you stop calling it friction. He turned his hand and the bus turned with it. Or maybe the city did. The scene shifted without permission. He was 6 in Heliopolis, roof hot under his feet, a chalk line between 2 pails. His grandmother's voice rose from the stairwell, the prayer worn smooth with use. The chalk line became a seaming cloth. He put his thumb on it and felt it, the micro-shear of cheap cotton, beloved because it was the only kind, each fibre announcing itself as a separate citizen. He could have named the shop the cloth came from if he'd had the right kind of memory. He had texture instead. Across the glass, the machine saw none of that. It saw spindles blooming like white moths at sensible intervals, latencies dialed to millisecond pride, slow waves deepening as if someone had added a weightless blanket to the bed. Ibarra marked time in the secret catechism of sleep. N2, N3, back again. A brief REM excursion stamped by eye flutter and heart speed. The Hallow stayed out of REM like a well-trained guest. When Seth drifted back toward the plateau where spindles live, it went to work. Gentle, punctual, greedy for yes. On the other side of the world, Tokyo's patient went under at roughly the same wall clock. Cairo's would start nearer dawn. The cloud server stayed outside the loop, like a chaperone with a good book. The on-head enclave did the only work allowed here, the work that a court would have called intimate, if a court could be taught the difference between intimacy and risk. He dreamed of rain then, not as sound that fell, but as cold embroidery pricking his forearm, stochastic, tender, the pattern so right he wanted to weep at its economy. He saw Lennox's face, just the jaw unclenching from a decade's worth of argument, and the vision did not collapse into sentiment. It held. The corridor widened. Someone walked down it, barefoot, respectful of quiet. At 3:30 the traces grew messy. Seth snorted, rolled, coughed himself, almost awake. The safety guardian vetoed the next nudge before it began. The loop waited. When the plateau returned, it resumed. The politeness is the point. The brain forgives a partner who waits. By 4, the Hallow had logged enough spindles to make a grant reviewer bite her lip and nod. Ibarra ran the memory protocol a tad guiltily. He'd studied a pair list before sleep, nonsense syllables married to strange textures, and he would be tested at dawn. It felt like cheating because it was. Sleep is the oldest cheat we know. Near 5, he dropped into a dream too literal to be entirely his. He stood in a room with no corners, all edges rounded as if by water. The Hallow rested on a pedestal. He lifted it. It weighed as much as a book he had loved and left. Doctor. Ibarra spoke from behind him in a voice he recognized as the voice she used when she spoke to frightened parents. If you hear singing, it's you, she said. We only harmonize. He woke in the soft hinge between sleep and shift change. The room had the faint blue of surrender. The Hallow's fans ticked down like cicadas at the end of summer. His mouth was dry with dream salt. How do you feel? Ibarra asked, too quickly. Like the inside of bread, he said, surprising both of them. New and sliced, she laughed once, short. I'll take it. They sat him up slowly. The world did not tilt. Good. His head had the plush heaviness of a toddler's. He fondled the paper cup the nurse handed him as if it were an instrument. Ready? Ibarra asked. Tablet primed. He gave her a look that said, let me be proud if I fail. She gave him one back that said, I will not take your pride from you just because I want my data. They ran the recall task nonsense syllables paired to texture names that had been silly when awake and were profound now. Bal went with linen, Tseg with slate, Zho with rain. He answered without thinking. The answers felt like chunks of tile dropping into place with a satisfying ceramic click. Consolidation uplift is big. Ibarra said, more to herself than to him. 70% over baseline. No hangover on the psychomotor. Latencies are clean. She pinched her lower lip, a tell he pretended not to see. Seth, describe your dreams. He told her about the bus rail, the cotton seam, the rain as embroidery. He kept Lennox's jaw for last. He watched her face carefully. She nodded with professional stillness and a private ache. Any bleed? She asked. Not content. Tone. He took his time. The room let him. It felt like when my grandmother beat eggs with sugar until the grains stopped being themselves, he said at last. It tasted smooth. There was a finish to it. Like someone had chosen to be kind to my brain while I wasn't looking. The nurse made a small sound, the human version of a spindle. Ibarra looked at the wall instead of at him. We'll run a delayed test at noon, she said. Then we'll call Tokyo, Cairo, after prayers. He nodded. The Hallow sat in his lap again, patient. He felt the childish urge to stroke it like a cat. He didn't, because even scientists are superstitious about what gestures mean in front of their seniors. Any headache? Nausea? Ibarra asked. No, he said. Just the sense that I've been forgiven for something I didn't know I did. She braced the stylus against her palm. Don't say that to the board, she said. But she smiled while she said it. At the door, the day shift burst into being. Sneakers, laughter, coffee that smelt like an apology and a promise. A porter wheeled past with a plant someone had not watered soon enough. The sun came up the hall like a person showing you a photograph of a child. On the glass, his reflection wore the Hallow like a saint in a painting he didn't believe in. He lifted it away, and his hair crackled with static. Go wash your face, Ibarra said. Then go sit with Lennox while he does the morning paper. Don't prompt. Just be, he said, hearing how unpleasantly spiritual that phrase could be in the wrong mouth. Consider it calibration, she said. In the adjoining rehab wing, Lennox looked up from a printout like a student caught cheating at Hope. Morning, he said. You look taller. I slept, Seth said, and realised how many years it had been since that had been a report. They did not talk about dreams. They talked about coffee, the most religious topic allowed in hospitals. Lennox worked the paper with the stubborn concentration of a man building a dock in a storm. When his lips pressed on one syllable, his forearm flexed just enough to be noticed. When he found the pair, he grinned at the page, not at Seth, because victory belongs to the thing itself first. By noon, the delayed recall held. In the chart, Ibarra wrote her careful numbers. In her private notebook, she wrote 2 words. She would also not show the lawyer. Sleep songs. Not a protocol. Not a hack. Not a claim. A label for what it felt like when the old brain let the new machine carry a corner of the blanket and hum along. That afternoon, the journalist emailed again. Seth ignored it and called his mother. He told her he had eaten. He didn't tell her that in the dream the cotton seam had been the seam at the edge of a border and that he had pressed his thumb against it until it did not exist. When he hung up, he touched the Hallow once. Quick. Like you touch a mezuzah if you are late to work but not too late to remember your house. The plastic was cool. The beast inside was asleep, which is to say it was practicing being kind. That night, the hospital would hum in the same registers. The machines would breathe. Somewhere, a nurse would knit at a station no one visits unless something goes wrong. And in the human electrical weather hidden under hair and bone, the old songs would play, and the polite ones would answer.